What's going on, everybody? It's your boy C-Zar, and we are talking about Bitcoin today. Hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and let's get into it without wasting any time at all. Here we are sitting at about $93,500. It is the 10th of January. We're about, what, $500 lower than what we saw yesterday. I was expecting in yesterday's video, the call was that by today we would be at 96K. So here we are, about $2,500 away from there. Not the most accurate call that I've ever made, but hey, man, trying to find a low, trying to catch the knife, as they say. That's kind of what you ask for. Yesterday, I did say at this low that I expected that to be the low. If I was wrong, then we wouldn't have too much lower to go. We're probably very near the low if that wasn't the low. I'm going to say it here again. I think that was the low, and I'll say it every day until it's proven true, right? So one of these days, and that's why I don't brag about being right, because to be right, I've got to be wrong first, or to be wrong, I've got to be right first. That's why I don't care if I'm wrong, and I don't brag if I'm right too much, right? But I do believe that we're either at the low or very near the low. It is completely possible we could go lower. I do want to talk about that real quick. If Bitcoin were to go lower, I really like this target area between about $85,000 and $89,000, with a very specific target around $87,000 to $88,000. Okay, very specifically, like to this low close here, right there, at like 87.5. Yeah, something around there, 87.5 to 88K. Could be where we go. If we take a relative low here to the relative high, tearing through your golden ratio like that almost always indicates that you would see the extensions, the fib extensions come into play, which is anywhere from about 85K to 88.5K. So I would say 88.5 is your first target, 87 is your next target. Somewhere in that zone is where I expect you to go. I don't think you'll hit the 1618 for support. I think that you would find support around here. So if you were to go lower, I'm not saying you do, but if you were to go lower, it could happen today. We could get like a big wick and then close back up. I would assume that it would come in the form of a wick, not in the form of like a closing body down here. But time will tell. We don't have to go lower. I'm only talking about this because it's a possibility, especially being at these low points here. But to be fair, we've bounced at this point before. We've bounced at it twice before back here, and once right here, and once right here. We found resistance on it back here. Just throughout this whole line, it's been significant. So could it provide significance again? My suspicions are there. Looking at the RSI here, finding support at the 40, which is also always a good thing. You found support here the last couple times and a couple times before that over there. So I definitely think that you could hold this for support, and I want to measure based off of that what the expectation would be, assuming that this is the low. Because if it's not the low, then likely what you do, again, I've already given you the ideas of how low you would go, right? It would be just a little bit lower. But if it is the low, then I think from a high to low here, the next kind of target area to measure would be probably the 786 to the 886, something like that, right? And I think that you would see a move more or less kind of like this, but coming up to here, and it probably does progress higher, right? I think that what's going to happen is, unlike this move that rejected all the way down like that, I think that we would probably reject, find support, and then move higher, something like that, right? Is kind of my expectation. But I think that we're on the way there now, essentially. If it's not now, we're very close to being there. It'll be whenever we find our low. But once we do find our low and once we are ready to begin moving higher, I suspect that we will begin moving at a pace similar to this. If not, potentially we can move at a slower pace up until the current all-time highs. And then once we get past the all-time highs, that's when we pick up the pace. We hasten ourselves a little bit. But time will tell. We'll see how it goes once we get there, right? As of now, hold on. I had to clear my throat there, man. I don't know. As of now, the daily RSI would suggest that we bounce here as long as we get a green day. If we don't get a green day, well, then that 85 to 88K area, specifically around 87K, comes on the table. 4-hour time frame here. If we look at it, you've got a low here, a higher low, and a higher low. That's double bullish divergence, which would have started back here on this candle. So sitting here at about 93.5K, that's at least good for a move up above 94K, likely above 94.2K. So likely this bounce, at least, even if it does roll over into something lower, we at least would move up for about another $700 or $800 or more. If and when we do get above $97,500, if we don't go lower first, if we get above $97,500 on a 4-hour closing basis, I would assume that this is the low and that we are moving higher than this high. When we move above the 382, that solidifies this as a low, in my opinion. It likely does. And then getting above this high in combination with that would very much solidify this as a low, and that we're not going to go below it. Breakdown, so some stuff to watch for there. Last but not least, the most exciting stuff whenever it comes to where we're going to go on this next move. We take the overall high here to the overall low. You can see that our next fib targets, right, if this is where we stop, the 1886200 area, that's where we stop. The very next fib target we have is all the way at 123K, 123.4K to be completely fair. So that'd be our next target. 142K is after that. That's our kind of range between 123 to 142. If we were to go lower, here's another thing showing support down to that 87K area. You know, maybe we find support on the 1414. That can happen. So just be prepared for that. One more thing I want to talk about, I guess, before we're done with the video is the expectations of the market, right? How much longer does the cycle have to go? I know that there's probably been more people over the past 48 hours that have called for the cycle top being in, right, than anybody over the past like cycle, this whole cycle, right? I don't think that that's the cycle high. First and foremost, I want to address something, okay, because a lot of people talked about it, and I wanted to give my opinion on it back when everybody was talking about it, but it's a little bit less relevant now, so I guess I'll give my opinion on it now. But the shooting star, right, the Bitcoin shooting star that we had on December, the very bearish candle that everybody's afraid of, right? If we look here, I don't know about you guys, that's a shooting star right there. I mean, it's not at the very top. It's not like a technical shooting star, but that's a pretty unfriendly candle. And then boom, we reversed it the next month, literally. That one looks pretty damn similar to the one that we had in December. And I don't know about you guys, but that looks like a pretty bullish month afterwards there. Here, you had one shooting star, and it was bearish afterwards, to be completely fair. It happens. At the bottom, big wick to the upside, big solid body to the downside. I don't know, man. I don't know. They're not all as clean looking as that one is. But there's sometimes, like, you've got one that's pretty clean and it'll go down, but sometimes you have these pretty clean looking ones and then boom, it rips the next month, you know what I mean? So I don't know. I don't know how serious we are to take these things. Here, shooting star, it went lower, but we didn't see lower lows technically, did we? No other shooting stars in this thing's history. I don't know. But beyond that, I don't think, first and foremost, I don't think that that's enough to condemn Bitcoin. I think that we have to wait for this month to close before we get any real kind of condemnation. If we close this month red, that would be really scary. And then we can make the discussion, talk about the idea that the market's over, that the cycle's over for Bitcoin. Okay, if this month closes red. And even then, we still have hope, but likely not that much hope. If this month closes red, you guys would hear a very, very different tone coming from my mouth. Okay, now I want to talk about this. Now I want to look at the length, the longevity of the cycles that we have here, okay? Not the first cycle because it was so short and we didn't have a Bitcoin halving in it. The next cycle, it was November 2012 that we had the Bitcoin halving, okay? Bitcoin halving happened in November 2012. We continued our cycle for 12 months. Here, our next Bitcoin halving happened in July 2016, July 9th. Our cycle continued for 17 months. Last time our halving happened in May 11th, 2020. Our cycle only continued for 11 months at that point. We didn't find our high until 18 months later, but our cycle really only continued for 11 months. And I think, truthfully, I think it should have been closer to 18. 18 and 17 are really close to each other. And I mean, that's not reason enough, right? 11 and 12 are really close to each other, but I think we got robbed last cycle. I think it should have continued on for 18 months, but whatever. 17 months or 17 months to 11 months is the given range. From our current halving, that's April, you know, at the current time that we're at now, 11 months being the smallest time frame that we've seen, that would put us out in March. So is the all-time high in? I doubt it. I doubt that it is, right? At least here, this would at least put us in March. I don't think that we end in March, guys, by the way. I think this was supposed to be closer to 18, which would give us more iterations that are closer to a year and a half rather than closer to a year, which is personally where I think this cycle is going to end, somewhere in September, October, November of this year. That's when I think it's going to end, personally. But if you don't like that metric, we can do one more and then we'll end the video. Okay, so from here, going from the cycle low to the cycle high, cycle low to the cycle high, bear cycle low to cycle high. I guess that would technically be the bear cycle low, to be completely fair. But that's like the low before you start the bull cycle. We won't do the bear cycle low technically. We'll just do the low before you started your bull cycle. Does that make sense? In which case, should I take this one? I don't know. We'll do that there, that low, and then that low there. So that high came in at about 25 months Here it came in at about 28 months, 24 months there. Here, again, 25 months would suggest that we still have longer to go, at least until March. And personally, again, I guess this metric would make the argument that the cycle doesn't last past March. But again, the whole point that I'm trying to address here is more that the cycle's not over. Maybe it doesn't last past March. I think it does. I think we go into September, October, and November. It doesn't end in March. But even if it were to end in March, that means we've got this month, next month, and March to have a finale. If by the way, guys, if the cycle does end in March, I want to show you what that means. I don't think it's going to end here, okay? And this might not be the best way to end the video, because I feel like I'm backtracking a little bit, looking at it this way from the lows to the high, and then measuring from the halving. Very suggested that we could top off in March, or even with the halving dates, we could top off September, October, of course. But by this metric alone, it's making that March number seem very likely. I don't think March is going to happen, okay? This is not the purpose of this video. I don't want to go on a whole nother 15-20 minutes showing all the reasons why I don't think that that's going to happen, but let me just show you, if it were to be March, why we should get excited. If the end of the cycle were March, why we should be excited about that, okay? Let me just show you. Here were the last 3 months of this Bitcoin bull cycle. We'll go from the low to the high. 1,000% move. Okay, I don't know about you guys, but 1,000% move from here would take us above $1 million, okay? Just so you know. Last 3 months here, from the low to the high. 377%. I would take that. I would take that in the next 3 months. Hell yeah, I would. Last 3 months here. 1, 2, 3. From the low to the high. 100%. Okay. If that means that we're at 200K by March and that's the end of the cycle, then we're at 200K by March and that's the end of the cycle, and Bitcoin doubles from here, altcoins go on a field day from here, and it's going to be a phenomenal end of the cycle last quarter that we have. I don't think that that's going to be the case. But again, the main point of me measuring this is not to validate the idea that we top in March. No, it's just if we were to top in March, I think we'd have relatively immediate reasons to be excited, right? We would have some very reasonable expectations that we would be at about $200,000, if not above $200,000 by March if we were to top off them. But I don't think we will. All that to say, even in my most worst case scenario where the cycle ends in the next 3 months, it definitely has not ended here. So no, I don't think the cycle's over. I do think we'll continue growing. I hope you guys liked the video. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe if you want to see more content like this. I do suspect that was the low that we had yesterday. If it's not, we could go down to about 87, probably around 87K would be my target. I don't think that we go lower than that. Some people are calling for 80K. Some people are calling for even lower than that. I don't think that we go below 85K, but I would even be surprised if we went down to like 87K or below 87K, to be completely fair. We very likely do find support in that 87 to 88K area if we go lower, but in my opinion, I think that we don't go lower and we probably bounce here. So hit the like button, you guys. Subscribe. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.